He has beaten cancer survivors on the court. He has beaten teenagers half his age. He has beaten the heat, the pressure, the doubters, and time itself for 20 years. But on a suffocating afternoon in Cincinnati, Novak Djokovic could not beat his own body. And what happened next left an entire stadium in stunned, uncomfortable silence. The images are hard to watch. A man widely regarded as the greatest tennis player who has ever lived, doubled over, gesturing helplessly toward his box, asking, again and again, why his own body was betraying him in front of thousands of people. And then, the moment nobody wanted to see, Djokovic was sick, right there on the court, in full view of the cameras, in full view of the world. 24 Grand Slam titles, 4 Olympic appearances, hundreds of weeks at world number 1. None of that mattered on this day, because for the first time in a long time, tennis fans everywhere are asking the same terrifying question. What is actually happening to Novak Djokovic? Let's rewind. 3 years. That's how long it had been since Djokovic last stepped onto a court at the Cincinnati Open. 3 years since the city that once watched him lift the trophy in a historic, brutal final against Carlos Alcaraz had seen him play a single match. He was coming back. He was ready. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. To understand what Cincinnati means to Djokovic, you have to go back further. This is a tournament that eluded him for most of his career, the missing piece of his historic career Golden Masters collection. Year after year, he chased it. Year after year, something went wrong. It wasn't until 2018 that he finally broke through, and he added more titles since, including that unforgettable 2023 final against Alcaraz, a 3-set war that many consider one of the greatest matches of the modern era. Cincinnati was never just another stop on the calendar for Djokovic. It was a tournament he had to fight for, harder than almost anywhere else. And that history makes what just happened even more painful to watch. This comeback was supposed to be a warm-up, a tune-up, a chance for the 38-year-old to find his rhythm before the final Grand Slam of the season. His last outing had been a straight sets exit in the Wimbledon semifinal against Jannik Sinner. Painful, but explainable. Before that, a nasty, awkward fall in his quarterfinal win. A groin injury had already forced him to skip Toronto entirely. The warning signs were there. Nobody wanted to read them. So when Djokovic walked out to face Thiago Agustin Tirante, a 25-year-old Argentine ranked barely inside the top 50, the story seemed obvious. The legend versus the underdog. The champion versus the nobody. Nobody, that is, except for the fact that this particular nobody had already beaten 2 top 10 players this season, including a win over Taylor Fritz in Montreal just 1 week earlier. Nobody had noticed. Nobody was paying attention. Everybody was about to. The match started exactly the way it was supposed to. Djokovic, sharp, composed, in complete control. He dropped only 2 games in the opening set, closing it out 6-2. The king of Cincinnati, back on his throne, doing what he has done for 2 decades, making the impossible look routine. And then, the heat arrived. Ohio in mid-August is no place for mercy. The humidity clings to the skin. The sun turns the court into a furnace. And somewhere around 6-2, 2-2 in the second set, everything changed. Djokovic walked to his chair for the changeover, and in front of everyone, he was sick. Think about that for a second. A 24-time Grand Slam champion, a man who has survived 5-set marathons against Nadal and Federer at the highest altitude of pressure the sport has ever produced. Sick, on camera, in the middle of a second-round match against a player he should have dominated. He called for the trainer, he took a medical timeout, and then, because this is Novak Djokovic, because quitting has never been part of his vocabulary, he went back out and kept playing. But something had broken. Not his ranking, not his technique, something deeper. Tirante, sensing the shift, seized his moment. He broke back. He leveled the second set. He closed it out. And then, in a deciding third set that Djokovic's body simply could not survive, the unthinkable happened. Tirante won it, 6-4. Final score, 2-6, 6-4, 6-4. 2 hours and 44 minutes of a battle that Djokovic's mind was still fighting long after his body had surrendered. To understand how seismic this result really is, you need the numbers. From 2005 to 2025, 2 full decades, Djokovic had won the first set at a Masters 1000 event 368 times. He had gone on to win the match 355 of those times. That's a 96.5% conversion rate. 96.5. In 20 years, only 13 different players had ever managed to come back and beat him after losing that first set. 13. In 2 decades. Thiago Tirante just became the 14th name on that list. And he did something even rarer. He became only the second man ranked outside the top 30 to beat Djokovic at the Cincinnati Open, joining a name from all the way back in 2006, a name most fans have long forgotten. This wasn't just a loss. This was history-breaking in real time. So what do you do when the greatest of all time can no longer trust his own body? You tell the truth. And that's exactly what Djokovic did. Speaking to the media after the match, visibly drained, he stopped hiding it. He admitted this has become an ongoing struggle, one that has followed him for years now, flaring up specifically in heat and humidity. He said it plainly. This is simply the condition he has to live with now. And then came the question that silenced the room. Would he play in Cincinnati again? His answer wasn't defiant. It wasn't the Djokovic fans have known for 20 years, the one who insists he'll fight through anything. This time his response was quiet, almost resigned. He said he certainly hoped so, but that it looked more likely he wouldn't. Read that again. The man with more Grand Slam titles than anyone in the history of men's tennis just told the world that he doesn't expect to come back to a tournament he has won 3 times. This is bigger than one match. This is bigger than one bad afternoon in the Ohio heat. This is a legend, in real time, confronting the one opponent he has never been able to outtrain, outthink, or outwill, his own aging body. For 20 years, we watched Djokovic bend the rules of what athletes are supposed to be capable of. We watched him play 5-hour finals and somehow look fresher in the 5th set than his opponents looked in the first. We watched him survive injuries that would have ended other careers. We built a mythology around his durability, almost as much as his talent. And that mythology just cracked, in front of everyone, on a hard court in Cincinnati. There is something deeply human about what happened here. Something almost uncomfortable to witness. Precisely because Djokovic has never let us see him this vulnerable. We are used to seeing him celebrate. We are used to seeing him roar at his box after saving championship points nobody else could save. We are not used to seeing him doubled over, sick, asking his team why his body won't cooperate. And maybe that's exactly why this moment has struck such a nerve. Because every great champion eventually has this match. The one where age and heat and time finally cash the check that decades of 5-set battles wrote. We have seen this story before, and it always ends the same painful way. We saw it with Roger Federer, whose body finally gave out on him after a string of knee surgeries, forcing a retirement that stunned a generation of fans who never imagined tennis without him. We saw it with Rafael Nadal, whose relentless physical style of play left his body so battered that his final years on tour became a constant negotiation between his will to compete and his body's refusal to cooperate. Both men fought it as long as they could. Both men eventually lost that fight, not to an opponent across the net, but to time itself. And now, unmistakably, we are watching the same story begin to unfold with Djokovic. The tennis world has not stayed silent. Reaction has poured in from every direction, with fans and analysts alike replaying the footage, dissecting every gesture, every grimace, every moment Djokovic looked toward his box, for answers his team could not give him. Some have called it the most concerning image of his entire career. Others have pointed to the raw fact of the numbers. A man who almost never loses after winning the first set at this level, brought down not by a rival's brilliance, but by his own physical limits. Even fellow players on tour, many of whom grew up idolizing him, have expressed a mixture of respect and concern, watching a competitor who redefined their sport now visibly fighting a battle no amount of preparation can fully solve. What makes this even harder to process is the timing. This was supposed to be preparation, a stepping stone toward the US Open, the final Grand Slam of the year, the tournament where Djokovic has lifted the trophy 4 times, most recently in 2023. Instead of building momentum, he now heads to New York, with more questions than answers. No rhythm, no confidence boost. Just the memory of being sick on court and admitting, out loud, that this might be the beginning of the end of his relationship with hard court tennis in extreme conditions. And New York in late August brings its own version of this same brutal equation: heat, humidity, and best-of-5 set tennis stretched across 2 grueling weeks. If Cincinnati's conditions were enough to break him in a single afternoon, the obvious question becomes impossible to avoid. How does he survive a Grand Slam under the exact same circumstances, with even less time to recover between rounds and an entire generation of hungry challengers waiting for any sign of weakness? Can he recover in time? Can 20 years of experience compensate for what his body can no longer reliably do? Can the greatest competitor of his generation find one more gear against opponents who no longer fear him the way they once did? Nobody knows. Not yet. Not even Djokovic himself seemed to know, standing in that press conference, choosing his words with a caution that felt entirely unlike him. But here is what we do know. Thiago Tirante will remember this day for the rest of his life. A career-best ranking. A win over a childhood idol. A statement that the next generation is done being intimidated by history. And Novak Djokovic will remember this day too. Not as a defeat by a better player, but as the day his body finally told him something he didn't want to hear. Is this the beginning of the end? Or is this simply one bad afternoon that the greatest of all time will overcome, the way he has overcome absolutely everything else placed in front of him for the last 2 decades? One thing is certain. The tennis world will be watching Flushing Meadows differently this year. Every match, every changeover, every gesture toward his box will now carry a different weight. Because we all just watched, in real time, a legend admit that even he is not invincible. Let us know in the comments. Do you think Djokovic can bounce back at the US Open? Or did we just witness the beginning of the final chapter of his historic career? And if this story moved you, make sure you're subscribed, because the road to New York is only getting started, and we'll be here covering every single step of it.